So you've found your inner voice, and you've started to tend to your own garden. But what happens when the path ahead disappears into a thick fog of uncertainty? What happens when you have to make a choice, without a guarantee of the outcome? This is where we turn to Soren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism. His most powerful idea is the leap of faith. Now, don't let the word faith throw you off. Kierkegaard wasn't just talking about religion. He was talking about something far more universal. He was talking about courage. The courage to make a choice. To step forward, even when you can't see the ground beneath your feet. We spend so much time worrying about the future, trying to predict every possible outcome, every worst-case scenario. We freeze up, paralyzed by the fear of the unknown. But what if we just stopped? What if we decided not to care about that fear? We can't know what's coming, but we can make our decisions with conviction, with our whole hearts. Kierkegaard had a quote that sums it all up. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. We learn from our past, but we must act in the present. So, take that leap, make that choice. The fear will still be there, but it will no longer own you. From the courage to act, let's learn the wisdom to let go. Our journey now takes us east, to the calming philosophy of Buddhism. In the West, we often think of happiness as something we get from the outside, a new job, a new car, a new relationship. But Buddhism sees happiness as a deep, lasting state of peace that comes from within. And the path there is paved with a simple idea: detachment. Think of your life as a river. We try so hard to hold on to every rock, every branch, every single moment, but the river keeps flowing. Detachment isn't about ignoring the river. It's about learning to float with the current, to enjoy the journey without clinging to anything along the way. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from tanha, a powerful craving or attachment. That craving is what makes us hold on so tightly to things that are always changing, which, in the end, is everything. So, here's the profound, simple truth. You only lose what you cling to. Let go, and you free yourself. But what if the problem isn't just clinging, but the very rules we're told to follow? What if society's values are the very things holding you back? Now we visit one of the most controversial minds in history, Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche was a rebel. He believed that traditional morals and social rules often keep us from living our most authentic, powerful lives. He didn't want you to be a follower. He wanted you to be a creator. He introduced the idea of life affirmation, accepting life just as it is, with all its chaos and challenges, and embracing it with a sense of joy. And then, he gave us the concept of the Übermensch, or Overman. This isn't a cartoon superhero. It's a person who has overcome their own weaknesses, who has the courage to question everything, and to create their own values, to become their own moral compass. Nietzsche famously asked, "I teach you the Overman. Man is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him?" It's a powerful challenge. It's not a question of what you've done for others, but what you've done for yourself. We've just touched on three giants of philosophy: the courage of Kierkegaard, the detachment of Buddhism, and the self-creation of Nietzsche. But these are just theoretical tools. How do we actually use them? How do we take these giant, world-changing ideas and bring them into our ordinary, messy lives? Let's begin where fear lives, in the unknown. Soren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, called it a leap of faith. Not just in religion, but in life. He believed that to overcome despair and find meaning, one must leap, blindly, courageously, into the fog of uncertainty. Sound familiar? That anxiety you feel before a big decision. That restlessness in your chest when the future feels unclear. That's the human condition. But Kierkegaard asks, what if you jumped anyway? He once wrote, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. We can only make sense of life by looking back, but we can only live it by moving forward. That means we must act before we know the outcome. That's not recklessness, that's courage. And when we stop obsessing over what might go wrong, we unlock the power to act boldly in the present. This, too, is the art of not caring. Not about outcomes, but about integrity. Not about guarantees, but about living honestly. From Denmark, we now travel east to ancient India. Here, under the shade of a Bodhi tree, sits Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. His teaching? That pain is real, but so is liberation. Unlike Western philosophies that chase happiness as pleasure, Buddhism offers a different path. Happiness is peace, not the thrill of getting more, but the stillness of wanting less. The Buddha spoke of 4 noble truths. They teach that suffering arises from desire, from clinging to what changes. Because the world is always shifting. People leave, fortunes vanish, bodies age. When we cling to the temporary, we suffer. So Buddhism invites us to let go, not out of coldness, but out of wisdom. Detachment, in this sense, isn't apathy, it's clarity, it's knowing. I can love this moment without needing to own it. You can dance in the rain without trying to stop the storm. That's what non-attachment means. It's not about avoiding emotion, but about flowing with it, without drowning in it. The Buddha said, you only lose what you cling to. When we let go, we don't lose everything. We gain freedom. Let's return to Europe. This time, Germany. Friedrich Nietzsche, the iconoclast. He wasn't here to comfort you. He was here to challenge you. To ask, are you really living your life? Or just following the script handed to you? Nietzsche said true strength comes from affirming life as it is. Chaotic, painful, unpredictable, not by complaining about the darkness, but by learning to shine anyway. He gave us the concept of the overman, the evolved individual. One who rejects herd morality. One who writes their own code. To Nietzsche, not caring didn't mean ignoring the world. It meant rising above it. Choosing your own values. Creating your own meaning. This takes courage, because it means questioning everything. Even the beliefs you were raised on. It means becoming yourself. And that is perhaps the most radical form of not caring. Not caring what you were told to be, so you can finally become what you were meant to be. From Stoicism to Buddhism, from Kierkegaard to Nietzsche, one message echoes through the ages. Freedom begins when we stop clinging, when we stop fearing, when we stop pretending. But how do we use this in real life? It starts by asking, what truly deserves your care? Can you control it? Does it align with your values? Does it bring you closer to peace? If not, let it go. This is not apathy. This is precision. Then, embrace uncertainty. As Kierkegaard taught, the future will never come with a guarantee. So act, with faith, with heart. Next, question the scripts you've inherited. From your culture, your family, your fears. As Nietzsche said, become who you are, and perhaps most beautifully, as the Buddha showed us. Don't resist the river. Flow with it. The more you let go, the more you return to who you really are. But this isn't the end of the journey. This is just the moment before the next step. The next letting go. The next becoming. The power of self-love and healthy selfishness. Have you ever been told you're selfish, just for putting your own needs first? Have you ever felt guilty for resting, for saying no, for choosing you. Today, we're going to unravel one of the most misunderstood ideas of our time, the space where self-love meets so-called selfishness. Let's take a bold step into this space. We'll lean on the wisdom of some of the most courageous thinkers of all time. Friedrich Nietzsche, Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow, Aristotle, Ayn Rand, Jean-Paul Sartre, the Buddha, Erik Erikson. These aren't just names in dusty books. They questioned the norms. They redefined what it means to care for yourself and others. Because let's face it, we live in a world full of mixed messages. Be kind, serve others, put them first, but also love yourself. Protect your energy, set boundaries. So which is it? It's no wonder we feel confused, guilty, torn between selflessness and self-care. But here's the truth. You can love others better when you start by loving yourself. This video is your guide to understanding how self-love and healthy selfishness work together, not against each other. And I speak from experience. I used to skip rest, skip meals, skip my own peace, just to avoid being labeled selfish. But all I gained was burnout. It wasn't until I explored philosophy and psychology that I saw things differently. I learned that self-love isn't vanity. And healthy selfishness? It's a lifeline. This mindset changed my personal life, my relationships, even my success at work. So whether you're here for growth, curiosity, or practical tools, there's something in this for you. Let's begin with this. Self-love isn't just spa days and self-care hashtags. It's deeper. It's looking at your reflection and saying, I accept you, flaws, failures, everything. It's treating yourself with the same kindness you show your best friend. Not perfection, but compassion. Self-love means feeding your mind, body, and soul, setting boundaries, saying yes to what lifts you, and no to what drains you. That doesn't make you selfish. That makes you whole. Now, about that word, selfishness. We hear it, and we cringe. It sounds cold, harsh, like pushing others aside. But what if we redefined it? What if selfishness, in its healthiest form, isn't about hurting others, but about honoring yourself? The ability to say, I matter. 2. To follow your dreams, even if they're unconventional. To protect your peace, even when others don't understand. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. True self-love and healthy selfishness are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. Because how can you pour into others if your own cup is empty? Now, let's bring in the voices of great minds who saw this clearly. Carl Rogers, a pioneer of humanistic psychology, believed that real growth begins with what he called unconditional positive regard. Not just from others, but from ourselves. Rogers taught us to accept who we are without condition. To love ourselves not because we meet some standard, but simply because we exist. He believed this kind of self-love creates the safety we need to grow, to take risks, to evolve. Abraham Maslow, another giant in psychology, saw self-love as the foundation of his famous hierarchy of needs. You can't climb to your full potential, he said, until you meet your own needs, physical, emotional, and spiritual. Maslow saw self-actualization not as selfish, but as essential. Personal growth, passion, purpose. These aren't luxuries. They're our birthright, but you can't reach them by neglecting yourself. Maslow's wisdom shows us that healthy selfishness isn't about ego. It's about creating the conditions where you can truly thrive. Think of it like a garden. Self-love is the fertile soil. Healthy selfishness is the water and sunlight. Without both, nothing grows. Together, they protect your mental health, build resilience, and help you rise strong in a world that often pulls you in every direction. So if you've ever felt guilty for choosing yourself, let this be your permission to stop. Because when you root your life in self-love and nourish it with healthy selfishness, you don't become selfish, you become whole. And that wholeness? That's where the real power begins. As we continue our journey into the art of not caring, self-love in ancient and modern philosophy, let's journey back in time to ancient Greece, where a man named Aristotle laid the foundation for how we understand happiness, purpose, and self-worth. Aristotle wasn't just a philosopher. He was a guide for living well, and at the heart of his teachings was a word that still echoes today: eudaimonia. It's often translated as happiness, but to Aristotle, it meant more. It was flourishing, a life of excellence, a life lived in alignment with your values, potential, and virtue. Eudaimonia wasn't about chasing fleeting pleasure. It was about becoming who you were meant to be. And here's where self-love comes in. Aristotle believed that loving oneself wasn't selfish. It was essential. Because how can you live a virtuous life if you don't believe you're worthy of one? He encouraged a kind of rational self-interest. Not ego, but excellence. To love yourself, in Aristotle's eyes, meant striving to grow, to seek wisdom, to live with courage, honesty, and purpose. Imagine this: you're an artist. Choosing self-love means honing your craft, trusting your vision, creating boldly, or say you're choosing between a high-paying job that drains you and a lower-paying path that lights you up. Aristotle would say, take the road that aligns with your deeper self, because that's the path to fulfillment. Self-love, when rooted in virtue, becomes a compass, guiding you toward your potential. And yes, that kind of selfishness, the healthy kind, is necessary. Now let's fast forward to the 20th century, to a voice that shook the world with controversy: Ayn Rand. Her philosophy? Objectivism. Her declaration? The virtue of selfishness. Before you roll your eyes, let's unpack it. Rand didn't promote cruelty or greed. She promoted reason, clarity, a fierce commitment to one's values. To her, the highest moral purpose was to live for your own happiness, not at the expense of others, but without sacrificing yourself either. She believed that every human has a right, a responsibility, to pursue joy, fulfillment, and purpose on their own terms. Rational selfishness, she called it, the kind that says, I won't betray myself to please others. I'll live truthfully, even if it makes others uncomfortable. It wasn't about taking, it was about choosing, and in doing so, respecting others who choose for themselves. Her words challenged the idea that self-sacrifice is always noble. She said, real happiness comes when you stop pretending, when you stop begging for permission to be who you are. You don't have to agree with everything Rand believed, but her message is clear. Healthy selfishness can lead to freedom. Freedom from guilt, freedom from conformity, freedom to live a life that feels like yours. And now, let's turn to a man who knew suffering firsthand. Epictetus, born a slave, later, one of the great Stoic philosophers. He taught that we may not control life's events, but we do control how we respond. And that control? That's power. He divided life into two categories. What's within our control, and what's not. Our thoughts, beliefs, actions, ours. Other people's opinions, outcomes, chaos, not ours. The more we focus on what we can control, the freer we become. This is the essence of Stoic self-love. Choosing peace over panic, virtue over reaction, clarity over chaos. To Epictetus, caring for yourself meant developing strength of character, emotional resilience, a calm center, not by avoiding life's storms, but by learning to walk through them steadily. True self-care, in Stoicism, isn't indulgence, it's discipline. It's training your mind like a warrior trains his body. And that discipline is love. Now enter Jean-Paul Sartre, existentialist, rebel, thinker. He famously said, "Existence precedes essence." What does that mean? That you are not born with a fixed identity. You create yourself, moment by moment, through choice. But with choice comes responsibility. To live authentically, to be accountable, to stop blaming others for who you are. Sartre didn't romanticize freedom. He knew it was heavy. But he also knew it was real. To love yourself, according to Sartre, meant to embrace that freedom. To stop hiding and start living in alignment with your truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means saying no. Even when the world doesn't understand. It's not selfishness for the sake of ego. It's courage for the sake of authenticity. And finally, we circle back east, to a man who sat beneath a tree and discovered a path to peace. The Buddha. He taught that suffering comes from attachment, from craving what is temporary, and that peace, real peace, comes from letting go. The middle way. He called it, not too much, not too little, balance. The Noble Eightfold Path became his map. Right view, right intention, right action, a life of harmony, compassion, and mindfulness. Buddhism doesn't shame desire, but it teaches us to observe it, to hold it lightly, and when we do, we make space for clarity, for kindness, for presence. Self-love, in the Buddhist sense, isn't loud or dramatic. It's subtle. It's waking up each day with gentle discipline. It's recognizing your suffering and meeting it with compassion. And yes, it means taking care of yourself, so you can care for others wisely. Because just like the lotus grows in muddy water, we, too, rise from difficulty when rooted in stillness. But this story isn't over. We still have more to uncover, more voices to hear, more wisdom to awaken. Let's pause here. Close your eyes for a moment. Now imagine this. You're sitting in stillness, breathing deeply, no distractions, no demands, just you, fully present, fully aware. That is meditation. And in the world of Buddhism, it's not just a spiritual practice, it's an act of self-love. Because every time you choose to be still, to observe your thoughts without judgment, to nurture awareness, you're choosing yourself. Meditation is the middle way in action. It's not about escaping life or drowning in it. It's about finding your center. And in today's world, full of noise and chaos, that's a radical thing. The middle way reminds us. Care for yourself, without ignoring others. Pursue joy, without clinging to pleasure. Live with intention, without swinging to extremes. In your daily life, this might look like taking a walk during a busy workday, eating mindfully, turning off notifications, not to escape responsibility, but to return to it with clarity and calm. That is self-love with wisdom. That is healthy selfishness in its highest form. And now, we turn to a modern voice who gave new depth to love itself. Erich Fromm. Fromm was a psychologist, philosopher, and author of the timeless book, The Art of Loving. He believed that love is not just something you feel. It's something you do, an art, a discipline, a skill you cultivate with patience, honesty, and care. And at the root of it, you guessed it, self-love. But Fromm made one thing very clear. Self-love is not narcissism. It's not about ego or vanity. It's about respect. It's about kindness. It's about seeing your own worth, even with your flaws. Fromm said, "To love others, you must first love yourself. Not in a selfish way, but in a foundational one. Because when you accept yourself, you make space to accept others. When you're honest with yourself, you can be honest in relationships." Fromm believed that the ability to love, to give, to receive, to connect, is what makes us sane. So, what does this mean in practice? It means showing up for yourself the way you'd show up for someone you care about. Listening to your needs, respecting your limits, offering yourself patience when things go wrong. It also means listening to others, seeing them, respecting their journey, because you've begun to honor your own. Fromm's view gives us a powerful bridge. Self-love and love for others are not in conflict. They are intertwined, just like breathing in and breathing out. You can't have one without the other. Now let's step back and look at the whole tapestry. Carl Rogers taught us that self-love opens the door to self-actualization. Maslow showed us that caring for our needs is a requirement for growth. Aristotle rooted self-love in virtue and purpose. Ayn Rand championed rational self-interest. Epictetus called us inward, to master our minds. Sartre pushed us toward authenticity. The Buddha whispered balance. And Fromm reminded us that love is an art. All of them, across time and cultures, say one thing clearly: self-love is not selfish. It's essential. And healthy selfishness? That's not greed. That's wisdom. In a world that often demands everything from you, give something back to yourself. Because here's the truth: you can't pour from an empty cup. When you care for yourself, genuinely, you become more able to care for others. More grounded, more generous, more alive. So take that walk. Set that boundary. Say no when you need to. Say yes to what nourishes you. You're not choosing between yourself and the world. You're choosing both. Because a world full of self-respecting, self-loving individuals, that's a world with more compassion, not less. And now, as we move from psychology and philosophy into the strange, vast realm of existentialism, we'll ask the question: if life has no inherent meaning, what do we do with that? What does it mean to love yourself? In a world that often feels absurd? That's where we'll go next. Let's step into the bold world of existentialism, where meaning isn't found, it's made. Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the giants of this movement, gave us a revolutionary idea. Existence precedes essence. What does that mean? It means we're not born with a set purpose. No blueprint, no divine script. We exist first, and then we decide who we are. It's like standing in front of a blank canvas each morning, brush in hand, free to paint anything. But here's the catch: with that freedom comes responsibility. Sartre called it radical freedom. You're free to choose, but you're also responsible for what those choices say about you. There's no hiding behind fate, genetics, or society. No blaming your past, your boss, your parents. Every action you take helps define what it means to be human. And that kind of freedom? It can feel like a blessing or a burden. Because sometimes, it's easier to pretend we're not free. To say, I had no choice. To follow the crowd. To avoid the weight of choosing. Sartre had a name for that: bad faith. It's the lie we tell ourselves to escape the discomfort of freedom. It's when we trade authenticity for convenience. But here's the truth: to live fully, you must first claim your freedom. Own it, all of it. And that's where another existential voice enters. Albert Camus. Camus didn't like being labeled an existentialist. Instead, He called his work a philosophy of the absurd. Why absurd? Because we crave meaning. We long for order, clarity, justice, and the universe? It offers silence. That mismatch, the screaming human heart and the indifferent cosmos, is the absurd. In his famous essay The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus imagines a man cursed to roll a boulder uphill for eternity, only to watch it fall back down, over and over again. Sounds hopeless? Camus thought otherwise. He said, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy." Why? Because in choosing to keep pushing the stone, Sisyphus rebels. He chooses his meaning. His struggle becomes his purpose. And that is powerful. Camus taught us that in a world without inherent meaning, we're not doomed. We're free. Free to create. Free to rebel. Free to live deliberately, even when life feels pointless. Even when pain feels endless. That's not a reason to quit. It's a reason to begin. Sartre and Camus don't give us easy answers. They don't hand us a map. Instead, they offer a challenge: to wake up, to choose, to face the absurd, and answer it with authenticity. So, what does this look like in your life? How does this freedom show up on a Monday morning? How do we apply this deep philosophy to the ordinary? That's what we'll explore next. Because existentialism isn't just theory. It's a way to live. A way to make meaning in a world that won't hand it to you. Let's bring Sartre and Camus into real life. Picture this. You're standing at a crossroads in your career. Each path in front of you, new job, bold project, radical change, offers its own mix of rewards and risks. Now pause. What do? Most people start looking outward. What's safest? What pays the most? What will people think? But existentialism urges us to look inward. To ask, what do I truly value? What kind of life feels most aligned with who I am? In the existential view, purpose isn't waiting to be found. It's forged, choice by choice, action by action. Fulfillment? It's not a prize handed to you when you hit certain milestones. It's something you build, from the inside out, not by checking boxes or meeting others' expectations, but by living in alignment with your values, by choosing what matters to you, and engaging with it deeply, whether or not the world applauds. You might find fulfillment in painting, even if no one buys your art, in mentoring, even if it doesn't pay the bills, in activism, in family, in self-discovery. The point isn't what you choose, it's that you choose. Sartre and Camus both agree. Meaning isn't given, it's created. By your decisions, by your actions, by the way you choose to respond to life. This is a radical shift. From chasing validation to embodying authenticity. You're not here to fit into a mold. You're here to shape your life. To take ownership. To stop waiting for permission. Imagine if success wasn't about numbers. Not followers. Not dollars. Not likes. But about how deeply you care about your work. How honestly you live. How consistently you grow. Wouldn't that be a more grounded, more fulfilling version of success? Even setbacks, in this view, stop being interruptions. They become part of the path, essential to it. Camus reminds us that life's absurdities, the chaos, the injustice, the uncertainty, aren't roadblocks. They're raw material to reflect, to evolve, to begin again. When you hit a wall, lose a job, end a relationship, face a health scare, that isn't failure, it's fire. And as Seneca once wrote, fire is the test of gold. Hardship reveals your character and invites you to grow. Existentialism doesn't offer a script. It gives you the pen. And as you write your story, your purpose unfolds, not as a destination, but as a direction, one rooted in clarity, in self-awareness, in the quiet courage to choose your path. Now, take a breath, because in the next chapter, we'll turn to an ancient voice, one that stood steady in the chaos of empire and politics. Seneca, a Stoic philosopher who, like Camus and Sartre, wrestled with life's most difficult questions, but came to surprisingly grounded, practical answers. Have you ever felt anger rising like a storm, uninvited, sudden, ready to burn everything in its path? Seneca knew that fire well, but instead of letting it consume him, he studied it, tamed it, and left behind a blueprint for us to do the same. Let's start simple. Before anger turns into action, your body gives signals: a tight chest, clenched fists, shallow breath. What if, in that moment, you paused, took a walk, breathed deeply, released the tension from your shoulders? Not to escape, but to return clearer. Seneca believed that mastery over anger wasn't about suppressing it, it was about understanding it. And then choosing something wiser. You have power over your mind, not outside events. He reminds us. So when someone offends you, you don't have to react with rage. You can respond with reason, with calm, with clarity. It's not weakness, it's strength. In Seneca's eyes, anger is a self-defeating fire. But virtue? That's the steady flame. And virtue, he says, is nothing more than right reason. Let that land for a moment. Not perfection, not sainthood, just reason. A mind that sees clearly and acts accordingly. So how do we practice that? By being thoughtful with our choices. By doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. By staying true to our values, even when the easy path whispers our name. Seneca invites us to reflect. Are our daily actions aligned with the kind of person we want to become? Are we acting out of impulse or integrity? Because virtue isn't a medal, it's a muscle, and it grows through use. Empathy, fairness, wisdom, courage, these aren't just lofty ideas, they're daily practices. Ways of living that turn chaos into clarity. And through them, we build something powerful, a resilient character, a steady spirit, a peaceful mind, even in turbulent times. Seneca didn't preach from a mountaintop. He lived in the heart of Rome, a place filled with pressure, politics, and temptation. And yet, he chose virtue, not comfort, reason, not impulse. That's what made his philosophy real. Even his views on wealth were radical. Though he had riches, he never mistook them for happiness. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. He wrote, because without challenges, how can we know our strength? Adversity isn't an interruption, it's the proving ground, the mirror that reflects what comfort often hides. So when life tests you, don't curse the fire. Use it to temper your resolve, to deepen your wisdom, to become the person hardship was sent to reveal. This is where Seneca invites us to shift our view. Wealth isn't how much we own. It's how deeply we live. Do we find joy in growth? Do we measure success by our inner peace, not our outer gains? Because real wealth is character, not coins. And happiness? It doesn't bloom in the absence of pain. It grows from meaning, from a life lived with purpose, even in the face of struggle. This is Stoicism in action. Not cold, not rigid, but profoundly human. And it continues, in the way Seneca speaks of nature, of the divine spark within us, and how living in harmony with the universe begins by mastering ourselves. Seneca never saw death as the enemy. Instead, he saw it as a quiet companion, walking beside us from the moment we're born. Not to haunt us, but to remind us to live fully. To the Stoic mind, Death isn't a tragedy. It's a return, a release, a transition back to the stillness that came before our first breath. His words are not gloomy, they're freeing. They strip away the fear, the panic, and replace them with clarity. He once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." How true is that today? In a world of headlines, scrolling news, and endless what-ifs, our minds spin stories. But those stories? They often have no basis in the present moment. Seneca teaches us to pause, to ask ourselves, is this fear real or imagined? Is it happening now, or just playing out in my mind? Most fear comes not from what's real, but from what might be. And when we live in those what-ifs, we abandon the only place we ever have power, the present. That's where Stoicism anchors us. In what we can control. Right here, right now. We may not control the future, or the past, but we can control our breath, our thoughts, our next action, and that is enough. Seneca offers us tools, not just quotes to admire, but practices to live by. Mindfulness, rational questioning, acceptance without judgment. He teaches us not to fight fear, but to face it, to welcome it, and then walk past it. And when anxiety tightens its grip, Seneca says, go outside. The mind should be refreshed by a walk in the open air. He writes, nature isn't just a backdrop. It's medicine. The wind in your hair, the sky above your head, the simple rhythm of your feet on the ground. That's not an escape. That's a return to clarity, to presence, to self. He wasn't talking about luxury travel. He meant movement, change, new environments that stretch our minds and awaken our senses. Even a short walk through your neighborhood can feel like a journey. If you bring your full awareness with you, in those quiet moments, away from noise and distraction, we often hear something precious, ourselves. And that's the real journey Seneca invites us on. Not across oceans, but inward. Because every place we visit is a mirror. Every stranger we meet holds a lesson. And every change in scenery gives us the chance to change inside. So if you ever feel stuck, anxious, overwhelmed, step outside, walk, not to flee, but to reconnect. With life, with peace, with perspective. As we come to the end of this chapter in Seneca's wisdom, let's pause and take it in. We've explored time, virtue, anger, death, adversity, and travel. But what matters most is what we do next. Stoicism was never meant to sit on dusty shelves. It was meant to be lived. One decision, one mindset, one day at a time. So here's the invitation. Start small. Practice presence. Question your fears. Walk with purpose. Choose virtue, not because it's easy, but because it makes life meaningful. Let Seneca's words echo into your daily life. In the way you rise each morning, in the way you treat others, and in how you speak to yourself. And if this journey stirred something in you, if you found a moment of clarity, calm, or courage, know this is just the beginning. There's more to uncover, more to live, more to become. So stay with us, because in the next video, we'll continue the path and go even deeper into the art of living well. If this spoke to you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Stoic Journey, and join us for the next chapter in this timeless philosophy of life.